So I've chosen some of my favorite American county courthouses for this video. We begin in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Ann Arbor, not far from Detroit, you can see here. So this one we're told was built in 1878. Let's just stay on that for a second, and I've clipped a little bit of information about this. They have the same old narrative where the previous courthouse was just too small for the purposes of the town as it was growing after the Civil War, and they do two rounds of voting. We have 1866, and then we also have 1877. The voters of the people of the city vote to fund a courthouse in 1877. Do you see the problem here with the narrative? This was built in 1878, 1877. They decide to build it, and then you just have to look at the building itself and reconcile how they were supposed to have put that thing together in that short period of time in the 1870s in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And of course they tore it down in the 50s, so we'll never really know. We'll never be able to investigate this thing. But we have these photos. You can see the statue work going on here. Absolutely ridiculous for 1870s anywhere in North America to be putting statues up. If you're trying to fit it into the narrative we've all been told. Here we have a construction project from mid-20th century. And you can see here what that looks like, an actual construction photo, what that should look like. And you can compare that to a lot of the construction photos we've seen elsewhere. So Ann Arbor, Michigan, leading the way here. A little bit of demolition going on here, as they like to do. And I did snip a little blurb of the demolition decision that went on here in the 50s. I just wanted to highlight this right here from Mayor William Brown at the time, who said, "The present courthouse was built before the turn of the century. Need I say more?" So that's some sort of justification for demolition, apparently, just because it was from the previous century. That should tell you something as well. Here we're looking at Bluffton, Indiana. Here you can see Bluffton just south of Fort Wayne, northeast of Indianapolis. And of course the absurdity of the narrative being this thing's built in 1889 at a time when there's 3,000 people living in Bluffton. This still stands, and we're going to take a closer look at some of this. And you have to forgive me for the watermarks, but we can still get a real sense of the detail of what they're doing in the late 1880s in Bluffton, Indiana, apparently. Of course, you know, if you follow my channel, that I have serious problems with the given historical narrative. I think our timeline has been altered, and the stories we've been given for the start date on a lot of these structures is a falsification. Here we're looking through the arch. They'll say many of these were built in the Richardsonian Romanesque style. Then a deep dive on H.H. Richardson. I did that with Matthew Smith. Rest in peace, Matthew. Recently succumbed to his battle with pancreatic cancer. So I'd like to send my love and appreciation for him to the family. Here you can see the gargoyles coming off the building. Again, we look a little bit closer at the detailing. So it's not just stones stacked upon one another. There's some ornate detail going on here that really belies belief, if that makes sense. Beggar's belief. Why would you stick a gargoyle on the corner of the building here in Bluffton, Indiana? So I think there's much more going on to what was actually happening in our past, and we've been lied to about the timeline. I'm not telling you that I believe that aliens built these, or angels even. I just think at its very basic level, our timeline has been falsified. Our next courthouse takes us to Carthage, Missouri. And if we zoom in on the little red dot here, that's Carthage. So you can see we're sort of triangulated here by Kansas City, St. Louis, Oklahoma City. There's Memphis as well. So all cities covered here previously on this channel. And this would be a rarity. We have a start and stop date on the construction for this thing. And let's take a look. 1894 in Carthage, Missouri, when the population was just about 8,000 people. They begin in August of 1894, and the building is completed, or as they say, dedicated, October 9th, 1895. So we're looking at a 14-month window of time to build this thing. And it still stands. And this is what we're talking about here. Carthage, Missouri, 14 months, apparently, in the 1890s to build this thing. And if you know anything about the 1890s, if you've been watching my channel, you'll know that the bulk of these structures are said to have been built in the 1890s. So you would think, according to our historical narrative, that that decade would be revered as a massive building boom for North America's history, when in fact what we're told about the 1890s is that there was a great panic and subsequent depression. So there's a direct contradiction with what we're being told about the construction of these buildings and what we're being told about the goings-on financially, if you will, at the time. And the work here is absolutely impeccable. You can take a look at the stonework, the arches, the textured stone. Anyone who does this kind of stuff for a living in the modern day will tell you how difficult it is to build with this stuff. All we really do in the modern day is veneer. We use a lot of this stuff and want it to look like this, but we don't use it as the building blocks, and it appears that these are being used as building blocks. And this was supposedly happening in the 1890s. In Carthage, Missouri. Alright, we come to our first Clinton, Iowa. And if we zoom in on the red dot here, you can see Clinton, Iowa on the Illinois-Iowa border. Sorry. And Clinton having about 20,000 people when this thing was constructed. We'll look a little bit of the narrative here. 1897 is when they'll say that this was built. And we do have a bit of comedy woven into the narrative. You can see here the first courthouse, or the previous courthouse, I should say, was built in 1869. It was a 2-story structure, and it only took them 23 days to build it, apparently. But by 1878, it was already too small, 10 years later. So this is a likely story that repeats itself when you look into the past. You have a series of courthouses aging out, or burning down, or falling apart sometimes. And then you have the justification for the construction of the one that, sort of like this one. Gives you pause for thought when you think about the historical narrative. This one, we're told, was money was allocated in 1892. Apparently quicksand and poor construction forced the foundation to be rebuilt. So the foundation gets built twice. This is all by hand, of course, in the 1890s. They get a new architect and contractor, and the building's finally completed in 1897. Anyway, it's a hot air narrative as far as I'm concerned. This one still stands as well. There it is in the modern day, 1897. Clinton, Iowa. No slouch, that's for sure. They really liked their clock towers back then. You add that to any sort of modern day structure, a tower like this, you're adding so much time and money to the project. It's not really done for those reasons. Here we come to our second Clinton, Illinois. And they're so close we could fit them on the same map here. We have Clinton, Illinois, Clinton, Iowa back here. This one, built in 1893, gets the wrecking ball in 1987. This was built at a time when there was only 3,000 people living there. And a common occurrence with many of these structures is the removal of the upper reaches and the tower. You can see that here depicted in an old postcard. You can also see it here in a photograph looking like it's from the 60s. So this one gets the wrecking ball in 1987. Ah, those Clintons. And you'll probably notice the timeline again. This will repeat itself, and as it so often does in so many of my videos, the early 1890s. So this one is in Dallas, Texas. Here we have Dallas, for those that don't know. So the population at the time, about 40,000 people when they decide to build the Red Castle. Now I do have a Dallas file. I've been meaning to do a video on Dallas. Haven't yet been able to put it together, so that should be coming in the not too distant future as well. Let's look at a little bit of narrative. So this is also something that repeats itself. They'll say here, 1890s construction originally had a substantial bell tower atop the building. It was 90 feet tall, constructed of cubic sandstone and granite. Shortly after construction, it was obvious that the building structure was not capable of supporting the bell tower. And so what did they end up doing? It was feared that catastrophic structural failure would follow, so the bell tower was dismantled in 1919. So is that to say that this bell tower is not the original? I have to wonder sometimes about these stories that were given. Certainly looks in keeping with the building itself. I don't imagine the restoration efforts are that good, but I do believe that this was done supposedly later in time, the restoration, so I'm not sure. I'll cover that more in depth when I do the Dallas video. It certainly has a nice color to it. And there's quite a few surprises looking into Dallas, because the population, as you saw, 40,000, so really not large at all. This is a city that booms in the 20th century. And I know the Hidden Truth channel covered this well on his boots on the ground investigations. Another one of those gargoyles that they seem to like using so much in the 1890s. Interesting too, it's got a bit of a pink mortar to it, this one. So we move on to a bit of a different look. This is the Polk County Courthouse in Des Moines, Iowa. Des Moines, a real old world gem of a city, as is Omaha and Kansas City. And many of these actually, now that I look at it. And just for some perspective, I live in a city of about 80,000 people. This is 120 years ago. I can't even fathom any sort of justification for the construction of a building like this in our modern age. Yet we're being told that 120 years ago, when so many of our technologies were in their infancy, that there was some sort of justification for this type of construction. And again, as they like to do in the narrative here, we've got one courthouse going up in 1847, the next one going up in 1858, and it gets enlarged in 1866, and eventually we get to the one we're focused on in the modern day. Here's a couple postmodern brutalist structures for you, just to give you a bit of a contrast there in styles. And you get a real sense of what's going on as we look at the interior of the structure. We do have a couple interior shots, so very, very difficult to accomplish this type of finishing. Curved ceilings, an ornate coffered, pendants around the lights. It's just absolutely magnificent work. 1906 in a city of 80,000 people. Really not making any sense whatsoever. Here we're looking upward, up into the tower, I would say. And here's the exterior portion. Look a little bit closer up here as well. We've got the eagles looking out over the surroundings. The Roman numerals on the clock. There we're looking up into the tower, just to give you a sense of how amazing this is and how difficult it is to believe that such a construction could have taken place at that time with the historical narrative we've been given about this. Let's take a look at what this says. Let us have faith that right makes might, and in that faith let us to the end dare to do our duty. It's interesting they use the V's and the U's interchangeably as well. It can make it difficult to read sometimes. Alright, so that's Polk County, Des Moines, Iowa. No, certainly no slouch. That's for sure. Alright, the old Vanderburgh County Courthouse in Evansville, Indiana. Here we have Evansville. You can see it here. Triangulated between St. Louis, Indianapolis, Louisville. One of my favorite old world investigations. So we have a timeline on this one. Construction starting in the spring of 1888, and it was completed in November of 1890. So we have just over 2 years to complete this in the late 1880s, 1890. Population at the time, 50,000 people living there. Just to add to the difficulty, we have the site apparently was a basin where canal boats on the Wabash and Erie Canal would deliver cargo and turn around for the return trip north. So after the railroads came and the canals were abandoned, the site is filled in and the courthouse constructed upon that site. I sure hope they packed down the fill. There it is in the modern day, still standing, still proud, despite the fact that it was built over a canal waterway that was filled in. I mean, we know they didn't have packing equipment back then. If you know what I'm talking about, any construction site has to hard pack any sort of excavated fill. And then you can reach a certain density where it makes sense to put your building on top of it. And if you don't, the building is going to sink. So I don't think they had the technology to do that back then. And that's a major hole in the narrative as far as I'm concerned. They don't really account for that phenomenon. Here it is, though. Evansville, a wonderful old world city. Real gem in these cities, these courthouses. Makes you wonder about the old world and what the structure of the old world civilization really was like. Was it just it was very similar to ours, but we've just been overlaid with this massive scummy layer of corruption? I wonder. Of course, I had to put a little cupola on top of the dome. Do have a shot of the interior. Circular railings, difficult, all very difficult to accomplish. Looking very European here in Evansville, Indiana. And just a little taste of some of the interior. You can see the circular windows there as well. 1880s, remember, a city of 50,000 people. I'll do one more, and I think I will save the rest for part 2. We have the Edgar County Courthouse in Paris, Illinois. And I really had to zoom in to find Paris. You can see here just on... Oh, let's go a little bit closer. Yeah, just on the side of the border of Indiana and Illinois, Paris. And as far as I'm concerned, this is a backbreaker for the conventional historical narrative. So if you're a skeptic, I hope you're still watching. We have a city of about 5,000 people. This thing's takes them 2 years to build this structure. 2 years. Let's take a closer look. This one really making no sense at all. And maybe you think that they tore it down, but they didn't. And it still stands, and it's still spectacular. 2 years. I don't know what to say. We're going to put a statue on the top. How are they doing that in the 1890s? With planks and pulleys? Were they just that much better at us and hardworking? It was just a bunch of elbow grease. Take a look at the date on here and compare that to what you see around it and the precision and perfection of everything, the details and the stone. And then just take a look at how rudimentary the numbering is on here. My suggestion is that this has been carved out and a date has been put on front of it to solidify a false historical timeline. Also, modifications have taken place as well. Let's examine this photograph a little bit closer. We look at the upper reaches. You can see what look like maybe railings and an open area here, and you have it terraced on 3 different levels. And if you look here, we can see what's happened is they've put just a typical cornice along the top here, and they've closed off the windows. So it has been dumbed down or dulled down, if you will, over time from its original state. But still quite a spectacular structure. And you have a modern day construction worker. I hope he's marveling at the precision and intricacy of the building here. No doubt he's probably just doing a little bit of restoration here and there, but you can see the amount of scaffolding that needs to go up just to access these locations. They didn't have this type of scaffolding, of course, in the 1800s. It was all planks. So that is in Paris, Illinois, and that concludes part 1 of our look at some of my favorite American courthouses. This has been an old world exploration. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, and comment. I believe we are in the process of remembering who we really are and casting off the shackles of illusion. Until next time.